They are one of the greatest infields in history, immortalized by a famous poem. This is the story of Joe Tinker, Johnny Evers, and Frank Chance, better known collectively as Tinker to Evers to Chance. In 1910, New York Giants fan Franklin Pierce Adams wrote the poem Baseball's Sad Lexicon. The poem only had 8 lines and began with the following verse. These are the saddest of possible words, Tinker to Evers to Chance. It was about the famous Cubs infield, inspired by another big double play against the Giants. The poem continued, trio of bare Cubs and fleeter than birds, Tinker and Evers and Chance, ruthlessly pricking our gonfalon bubble, making a giant hit into a double. Words that are heavy with nothing but trouble, Tinker to Evers to Chance. Adams was a sports writer, short on material and facing a deadline. He thought of how the Cubs frustrated the Giants again and again with their spectacular defense. He even gave the poem the original title of That Double Play Again. It also appeared as Gotham's Woe before settling into its famous title. Adams thought nothing about the poem when it was initially published and was surprised by its success. The short, catchy poem was soon syndicated in papers across the nation and became a sensation. It also guaranteed lasting fame for the trio. First baseman Frank Chance joined the Cubs in 1898. In 1902, he was joined by both second baseman Johnny Evers and shortstop Joe Tinker. They turned their first 6-4-3 double play on September 15, 1902. The trio were teammates until the end of the 1912 season when Chance moved to the Yankees. From 1906 to 1910, the Cubs turned 491 double plays. Out of this total, the Tinker to Evers to Chance double play happened 54 times in 770 games. The trio formed the core of the Chicago Cubs defense, and in 1906, they led the team to their first pennant. They met the Chicago White Stockings in the World Series, but lost 4 games to 2. They would win back-to-back World Series titles in 1907 and 1908. The trio would appear together for one last World Series in 1910, but would lose to Connie Mack's Athletics. That series was like a changing of the guard as they met what would become the core of the $100,000 infield, one that historian Bill James called the greatest infield of all time. This infield included Eddie Collins and Frank Home Run Baker. However, Evers would write the final chapter in the rivalry. As part of the Miracle Boston Braves, he batted .438 to lead the Braves to a sweep of the heavily favored Athletics and its $100,000 infield. Ironically, there was no Tinker to Evers to Chance double play in any of their 21 World Series games. While the trio has gained baseball immortality, one person is conspicuously absent, the 4th player in the infield. His name was Harry Steinfeld. He was part of the Cubs infield from 1906 to 1910, when the team won 2 World Series titles. In 1,647 games, he accumulated a 30.3 WAR. He also batted .267 with 284 doubles, 202 stolen bases, and 762 RBIs. He had a solid career, but it paled in comparison to his famous teammates. Plus, maybe the poem's author didn't think his name fit in the rhyme. In 1946, the Old Timers Committee inducted all 3 players into the Baseball Hall of Fame. They were not formally enshrined as a unit, but everyone in the baseball world knew their legacies and careers were linked forever. By that time, however, Frank Chance had passed away. Joe Tinker and Johnny Evers would also pass away within the next 2 years. Their induction elicited almost universal approval. Every baseball fan knew the line, Tinker to Evers to Chance. Many fans even thought it was the poem's title. Years later, however, there were questions about their Hall of Fame credentials. There were claims that their induction was a product of the poem's fame and not on-field performance. But is this assessment correct? And how important are stats compared to cultural significance? Let's review the 3 players' career summaries. Joe Tinker retired after the 1916 season with a 53.2 WAR in 1,806 games. He batted .262 with 31 home runs, 263 doubles, 114 triples, 785 RBIs, 774 runs, and stole 336 bases. Tinker never led the league in any offensive category, However, he placed fourth in the 1912 MVP voting. Johnny Evers effectively retired after the 1917 season. He had a 47.7 WAR in 1784 games. He batted .270 with 12 home runs, 536 RBIs, 919 runs, 216 doubles, and stole 324 bases. He never led the league in any offensive category. He did, however, win the MVP award in 1914, despite placing seventh in WAR. Frank Chance was a player-manager from 1905 to 1912 with the Cubs and with the Yankees in the next 2 years. He retired as a player after the 1914 season. Under his stewardship, the Cubs won 4 pennants and 2 World Series championships. He led the league in stolen bases twice, in runs scored once, and in on-base percentage also once. While he never placed in the MVP voting, it should be noted that the award was only given from 1911 to 1914, before resuming in 1922 in the AL and in 1924 for the NL. Chance played in only 1,288 games and retired with a WAR of 46.0. He batted .296 with 20 home runs, 200 doubles, 596 RBIs, 798 runs, and 403 stolen bases. All three had great and successful careers, but a major criticism is that none among the three had a .300 batting average. This is glaring as higher career batting averages define the dead ball era more than the modern game. In addition, no one in the trio also got 2,000 career hits. Their career WAR values are also significantly lower than the average Hall of Famer in their respective positions. Critics also say they're in the Hall because of nostalgia instead of stats. Some say their entry prevented more deserving players, such as Bill Dolan, from getting in. On the other hand, supporters argue that they were core components in the Cubs dynasty and World Series championships. They were a product of their time when defensive chemistry mattered more than power numbers. It is also difficult to quantify defense in the game's early years. For example, UZR, a relatively modern metric, is a challenge to apply retroactively because of insufficient data. Moreover, Tinker to Evers to Chance are essential in baseball lore and had a significant cultural impact on the game. Their contribution extended beyond statistics as the trio embedded themselves in the very language and lore of the game. They were larger-than-life figures when newspapers created legends of America's pastime. This debate will likely continue as baseball's early years are revisited by more modern, though not necessarily better metrics. Thank you for watching. Do you think the trio, Tinker, Evers, and Chance, all deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. It helps a lot.